This
Sickle?
conference will now be recorded.
Mr. Van Sickle?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Here.
Mr. Eubank?
Here.
Mr. Emmert?
Yes.
Mr. Koenig? Mr. Maderis?
Here.
And Mr. McDougall?
Yes.
All right, I'd like to review the minutes from March 22nd.
Before we do that, can we just have on the record, Chuck, that this meeting is
Please
being
do.
conducted remotely based on the fact that we still are under Governor Pritzker's executive order, which allows remote meetings due to the
Please
pandemic?
do.
Thank you. That's all. I wanted to make sure we got that on the record.
Thanks, Mary.
Mhm.
Everyone has reviewed your minutes from March 22nd meeting. Is there any changes or corrections?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, it's in the paragraph, Mr. Emmert made the motion to approve. Wouldn't it be a motion to approve setting a public hearing to affect a change in zoning from District 2 to District 3 for the property located at the southeast corner of Swift and Main Streets? I guess I made a motion to approve a resolution setting a public hearing to affect a zoning map text amendment change from zoning 2 to District 3 with a special use for a self-storage warehouse / mini warehouse for the property located at the southeast corner of Swift and Main Streets. Because I think the public hearing was actually to change the zoning from 2 to 3 with a special use as opposed to just this makes it sound like it was a hearing to approve the special use.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Bill. If you would repeat exactly how you made it, we'll consider the change.
Okay. Mr. Emmert made the motion to approve resolution setting of the public hearing to effect a zoning map text amendment for the property located at the southeast corner of Swift and Main Streets in the village of Winnebago from District 2 to District number 3 with a special use allowing for self-storage warehouse / mini warehouse. Seconded by Mr. Koenig. Then approved, roll call vote of those present. Did you get that, Mary?
I did.
Any comments on Mr. Emmert's change?
The only thing is that it doesn't comport with that was the name of the resolution. So if we have it as a clarification that was the intent of the resolution, but the way that it's worded there is how the resolution itself was actually worded. And I'm just looking to see exactly how it's different because I was busy writing. I wanted to make sure I got it all down exactly as
Okay, I'm trying
Mr. Emmert
to
had said it.
Really, the difference appears to be that there needs to be something about approve a resolution to set a public hearing. That's really the main focus of the change.
Right,
all
but
the
to
other
set a
language-
public hearing to change from District 2 to District 3.
Right.
But
Does
District 2 to District 3 with a special use permit under
Correct.
District 3, not just a straight change from 2 to 3.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I think the difference is in these minutes, special uses previous to the general business district, whereas in our advertisement, it's afterwards. I think we should consider how we advertise the public hearing.
Let me look.
Basically, it's exactly similar to Bill's except for some wording.
Gotcha. Okay.
Do we need a vote on this, Mary?
That's because he's asking Janessens to correct the minutes. So that somebody then would make the motion to correct them or to approve them as corrected.
I will so move.
Second.
Any
Was
further
that Mr.
discussion?
Booker that seconded?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Not a roll call vote, please.
Come and just give me 1 second, Mr. Booker. Okay. Then Mr. Van Sickle,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Emmert,
Yes.
Mr. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Koenig,
Yes.
Mr. Maderis,
Yes.
and Mr. McDougall.
Yes.
Thank you.
Does anyone have a conflict of interest tonight? None indicated. None has signed up for public comment. So we'll get directly into the zoning change.
Mr. Van Sickle, I'm going to interrupt. We do have a new caller. If you could just identify yourselves, please.
Chuck,
Jack.
this is Mike Booker. Can we go back to disclosure of conflict of interest?
Yes.
Good. Okay, I didn't hear you when you called for it. I want to disclose that Jason Ackerman recently completed tree work for me that we agreed upon and started last November. The work was postponed during the winter time, and then he resumed and completed it in April.
Thank you, Mike.
And I think I brought this up before, and I don't think it was a conflict, but I've represented the Ackermans previously. Or
Thank
actually,
you.
and then is that Terry and Sarah Sitten that have called in?
We're here, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So the item that we are faced with tonight is the zoning change for the change from district number 2 to district number 3 of special use permit for the mini warehouses or self-storage facility. We've heard some comments in the public hearing concerning some items that should be considered as conditions of special use permit. Is there any comment from the board concerning any of these? What are your thoughts?
I have a question. With respect to the height of the fence. Dick, did you say when we first talked about that, there could be a problem going above 6 feet? Because originally we talked about a higher fence, but we didn't want to go because of some issue that you'd brought up, which is why we required the lights to be placed lower, so the lights would be at least a foot below the height of the fence. That would stop the lights from being visible on the other side of the fence, and then with 6 feet, we would still have a fence that would block the headlights. But I remember talking first about 8 feet, but there was a problem with that. Do you remember what you said?
Well, the 8 feet rule in the code books used to be required. If you went to 8 feet, it had to be permitted. Previously, it wasn't permitted you didn't have to permit a fence if it was 6 feet, up to 6 feet. But the 8-foot fence has to meet the code's wind loads, and which are a 3-second burst of a wind between 90 and 110 miles an hour.
Is that something that could be can that practically be done?
I'm not following you, Bill.
Can an 8-foot fence practically be put on this south property line?
It could, yes.
Okay, the next question I had, Mr. Zito said something along, if I understood him right, now I joined the meeting late, or the hearing late, about access for the sit-ins along this south property line. But I thought this was all owned by the people who own the lot on the south. I didn't think the sit-ins had any access. I thought, you know, they may have a fence back there, but that would just be a fence going to the other people's property. I never thought that there was actually a right-of-way or any access from Swift Street going east along this southern boundary of this lot.
The Sittons have a gate in their fence that permits them to go from Swift Street into their rear yard. This is what you're talking about, Bill.
But is that a public right-of-way, or do they have an easement from the people on the south? I thought we just had 2 lots button up against each other. Or is the Sittons fence far enough south that they can come out of their fence and still go on their property over to Swift Street? In which
They go
case,
direct.
if the fence is built along the southern lot line of the northern lot, the Sittons would still have the same access.
Sittons can go directly from their property onto Swift Street.
Onto
Bill,
Swift Street.
Bill, if you
But
look
maybe I'm
at
missing something. Maybe I misunderstood Mr. Zito.
Bill, if you look at the one of the exhibits that was attached, it should show the diagram of the layout for the Ackerman's property. And you
Okay,
can
let me see
see,
if I can.
you can see there's, from their drive, it looks like there's a cement or a driveway that goes out. And I believe it's that entrance where the cement was poured that now goes to the south onto Swift Street a little farther than it used to. And my assumption is that is where the cement is. It's on the right of way approaching the roadway.
That is correct.
So that would not be the Sittons property. Now, I see Mr. Zito is raising his hand, so Mr. Van Sickle, I'll let you know that he wants to speak.
Mr. Zito?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my understanding is that, just to kind of clarify, the Sittons do have an access along, it would be their north property line and the south property line of subject parcel that's being, that has a zoning request there. But that their gate is actually on Swift Street. So they do have direct access onto Swift Street from from an entranceway there. The portion of their gate, the area in front of their gate, on their property. So the gate is on their property. Their fence is on their own property. There had concrete poured in front of it, I think by accident or, you know, inadvertently, maybe as a part of the Ackerman property having its concrete approach put in. I think they just got some over the property line in front of, onto my client's property. And then there's another portion in front of the gate that was then, it used to be a gravel, you know, drive or a gravel leading up to the gate so that my clients could get into their property there. The gravel portion was then had dirt put down and was seeded over by the applicants there. So all of those items happened on my client property. My post was just asked if that was the original condition.
Okay, I understand now. So we're only talking on the adjacent to Swift Street.
Yes, sir.
They're not going on to Ackerman's property. They're driving directly through the public right of way onto Swift Street. What Jason Ackerman done when he poured his concrete approach that ties into Swift Street, he created an angle that goes further south on Swift Street than the north line of Sitton's property would be extended west. Now, Attorney Gaziano and I went down there and looked at that a couple weeks ago, and what the effect of driving over that concrete now is it is a level drive directly into the Sitton's gate, but it's not gravel, it's only dirt, and that's a problem. I personally don't see any problem with the concrete if it is if the gravel is put 3 or 4 inches of gravel in there that would keep Mr. Sitton's vehicles from getting mired in the mud as he goes in and out of his gate.
So am I correct in that, Mr. Zito, you're saying the Ackermans encroached upon the Sitton's property?
In a nutshell, yes, that's correct.
That's not
And
true.
what are the Ackermans intending to do with that? Have you talked to them?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Have you talked to the Ackermans? Have you told them they've encroached upon the Sitton property? And this sounds like a dispute between the two property owners. And are the Ackermans willing to do something to satisfy the Sittons with respect to that encroachment?
My understanding is that I think there has been a conversation between the two property owners. I would defer to the Sittons to chime in on any conversations that they may have had with the Ackermans about that, if that's okay with the chairman.
Please do.
Terry, can you chime in as to any discussions that you or Sarah may have had with the Ackermans about the area in front of your gate, the area that was either seeded over in grass or the area that's concrete, that has concrete in front of it?
We only spoke to the Ackermans about the fence on the east side. We never spoke to them about the encroachment with the cement. We're deferring to our city, except for the gravel. My husband asked a few times for the gravel to be put back. And it's more than a few inches he took out.
I think,
So it sounds like, I apologize, I was misunderstood about the concrete part, but the gravel sounds like it was discussed. And I think the results of those discussions were where we didn't get, nothing happened, so.
Correct.
Excuse me, this is Jason. I didn't take anything out of there. I have photos of that as grass. I will put gravel in. I have no problem with that. I just wanted that I didn't take anything out. Zero.
Again, I see this as a matter between the property owners, because if there's an encroachment, Mr. Ackerman's either got to get it out of there or make the Sittons happy. I don't know that there's really anything the village can do.
Bill, this is
Well,
my.
the village approved
Jason-
my engineering print with the flare on it, though. That doesn't count. Chad,
Right.
Chuck, didn't you go down and talk to Chad? That was my understanding.
Well, Bill, there is no encroachment on Sitton's property. This flare of concrete is out in the public right of way.
That's right.
Right. So the idea is the village would handle how the right of way would be restored. The area that we're talking about is not property that's owned by the Sittons. So it's not an encroachment on the Sittons property when we're talking about the grass and the seed that was put down on the dirt. That's a right of way. We have our Public Works Department determine whether we need a swale because we do not have any curb and gutters down that road. So they determine the depth of the swale and the angle of the swale if one is needed. So we defer to our Public Works Director, Chad Insko. And normally if it was flat before, it would be flat again. If there was a swale before, there would be the same exact swale after any construction. So my understanding is that the Ackermans did talk to Chad Insko, and Chad then approved of the way that it's currently been, I guess, reseeded and the dirt placed there by the Ackermans. But I just want to make it clear that we're talking about the village right-of-way. It's not the property owned by the Sittons. So it's a village matter as to how it's to be restored. We've had in previous situations, landowners that have taken property and on their own in the right-of-way have changed the direction of the swale, putting gravel in or other things, and the village has required them to put it back the way it was. So we really need to know, and if Mr. Ackerman does have pictures depicting the property prior to his taking anything out and what it looks like now, that would tell us the whole picture and the whole story as to whether any improvements need to be made. Now, it sounds to me like the Ackermans are willing to put gravel back in to satisfy the Sittons. And I imagine then if that takes care of the issue, we don't need to talk about that issue anymore.
Well, as a enlightenment, this gravel has been talked about for probably a month, and I have a email from Chad Insko saying that he indeed talked to Jason. This was April 27th, and Jason agreed to put the gravel in there. Is that right, Jason?
I had to take it off mute. Yeah, I did. I was waiting on Chad to tell me, how or how much, where to put it. That was my understanding as when the last I talked to Chad. Now, maybe we got a miscommunication, but yes, I have no problem putting gravel in. That'll be better.
How can we say then?
Thought I was putting it back how it was.
You'll get with Chad within the next day or two and get the gravel situation resolved?
Yeah, sure.
And just as a matter of clarification, the right-of-way area typically is not owned by the village, but in essence controlled by a municipality. So that an individual, and I just know this from my IDOT work, is that the person still owns that piece of the property, but they're just very limited as to what they can do with it because it's controlled by, the different services that might be there, so that they can't put trees there because the village needs to have access, that sort of thing. But just as of record, the village, unless they somehow acquired that property, the village wouldn't own that right-of-way area, but certainly has control over what's done in that right-of-way area. And Mr. Van Sickle is correct about what Chad had indicated, in that I had reached out to Chad because I've been out to this property and I have some pictures actually of this particular area. And I asked Chad, I said, what's the story? And he indicated that he was surprised that it was dirt, that he had intended that it be gravel. But it appears that that issue is going to be resolved.
Nobody had told me that at the beginning, just for the record. But I have no problem with putting that in. It'll be better for the turn in and everything. It'll be more solid. I'm glad the issue's coming up.
Okay,
Are we talking about land, right-of-way land for access to the Ackerman's property?
right-of-way land?
Yeah, they'd be going over right-of-way land to get access to their property. There aren't
But it's
telephone
some of that
poles.
land owned by the Sittons. I understand the village has control over the right-of-way, but can the village put a right-of-way use right-of-way that's on the Sittons property for access to the Ackermans? Unless I'm not understanding what you're talking about.
That is correct.
They're not on Sitton's property. It's all on the right-of-way.
But what I'm explaining is that the property that is in the right-of-way is still owned by the Sittons. Now, certain of the right-of-way property that is to the north, of course, is on Ackerman's land. The right-of-way property is not owned by the village, but the village basically has certain control over that, so that's why the property owners are limited. I think where Mr. Emmert's question is coming in is, can the village basically, even though it's in a right-of-way area, can the village allow another property owner to do something in that area that's not for a village purpose? Is that correct, Mr. Emmert?
That's correct, because you're talking about access to the Ackermans, and it sounds like you're making the access wider, and it's gone wider to the south and encroached upon the Sittons property. And the Sittons property should not be part of a right-of-way access into the Ackerman's property. To me, that's an encroachment, even though the village has control over it. The Ackerman's access and egress should be on their property solely, unless the Sittons have agreed.
Right, and when I say
If I'm
that
understanding things, Mr. Zito, am I understanding what you're saying?
Yes, Mr. Emmert. So I think, and this is, I think Terry and Sarah can kind of elaborate on this, but the way I kind of look at it is, if someone were to try to enter into the storage facility, I think what ends up happening is that they end up kind of cutting the corner a little bit, or they might have to go over just a corner or a bit of the area that's on the Sitton property in front of their gate. I think a lot of times to get into the apron, I guess the concrete apron that's on the Ackerman's property there. So I think, yes, we would agree that from your perspective that's an encroachment there.
And then, Jason, you're saying the village okayed where you put this ingress egress apron?
The flare, yeah, yes, that's on the print.
I guess I'd ask Mary to look into that, because I see that as a problem. I guess I'd like to know what factually is going on. Are they actually encroaching upon the Sittons property with that access way?
I can tell you from, again, I'm not an engineer, but from being out at the property, when Mr. Sitton showed me where the pin was, it does appear, from the picture at least, the photograph that I took, that there is an area that going on to the Ackerman property would be going over the Sitton property. And remember too, when I say that the village has certain control over that right-of-way area, I'm not saying total control, because the Sittons still own it and can use it, but it's just that they're somewhat restricted, as anybody who has property that's in the right-of-way, somewhat restricted, because if the village needs to get access, they can do that. But that's the village getting access and the village doing things in that right-of-way area. The other thing that has to be determined is exactly how far that right-of-way goes. Typically, it's to telephone poles. There aren't telephone poles on that side of the street to be able to gauge.
Okay, I got a question for Mr. Zito now. What would your clients be satisfied with? Is there anything they'd be satisfied with if this area was improved so that they could use it for access to into their gate? Is there a further improvement that the Ackermans could make that they would be okay with this?
I think all that's been expressed to me is that they would like it just returned to the gravel that it was before there in front of their gate. That's all they've expressed to me. Now, are you asking if the whole thing was turned to concrete, like literally the area, like the whole, would they be okay with that? Instead of having gravel, they would have a concrete drive, so to speak, leading up to their gate through the right of way? I guess I don't know. I've never had that conversation with them.
Okay, I'm just wondering if there's some middle ground here, you know, that the two adjoining property owners can get a meeting of minds, because I see a problem with encroachment myself.
Right, so I think what you're saying is.
I also wonder what the village had to do with the problem, I guess, if the village did okay the plans.
Mhm.
So I think I understand what Mary's saying, so I think we need to look into that unless the Ackermans and the Sittons can resolve it between themselves.
Sure. Terry and Sarah, it's Aaron. You guys just want it turned back to gravel, right? The part that's on your property, the way it was, the way that it's been for however many years, you just want the area that's on your property to be turned back into gravel in front of the gate, right?
That's correct. Just put back what he took out. You know, he took out gravel. He didn't take out dirt, but he put in dirt. He knows that.
And the fence to go up, and then to give us access on the other side so that we can fix our big fence and to leave us alone. That's the end of it.
And our property sets higher than north, so we're just looking over a 6-foot fence. So that's why we're going after an 8-foot fence.
Terry, Sarah, okay, that's all right. Just I'll speak for the rest of it, okay?
Yep.
Okay.
And could I just ask for,
We're only looking to have the gravel replaced or put back.
So it sounds like there's a resolution between the parties as to the gravel being put back down.
Would the cement have to be taken out then?
that's my question.
Well, that's.
If it's flared that much to the south, it's probably in front of or on the Sittons property.
It is. I wish you could, you probably can't.
Move
see
it to your right. Thank you. A little bit more. To your right. Okay, stop. Okay, and you're talking about what looks like a 45-degree angle up towards the buildings as it flares to the south. And then the Sittons property, I think I can see the fence, so.
So
how
if the
far
gravel,
does the Sittons property go north of the fence, Mr. Zito?
North of the fence?
Yeah.
Terry, how far does your property extend, the pin to your property line go past the fence?
It's only about 3 or 4 inches.
Okay,
Okay, so the fence is pretty much on the property line. Okay.
yes.
The one thing I'm not seeing in that picture is where the gate is.
I might have another
Mary, can you-
picture. Hold on.
Okay.
Give me a second, because I took a variety of pictures. These. I just can't tell. Okay, let's see. Nope. Yeah, no, I guess I don't have, I thought, well, wait, here's another set of pictures. thought I took one just right of the fence itself. Yeah, no, the picture that I took, this isn't gonna help you exactly, but this picture that I took was trying to show this, that was the way that they got in. And that this area in here is where they drove from Swift Street.
Onto it. Is the gate right at the northern corner of this fence lot, of the lot and the fence, Aaron?
Yes.
I believe
If the Sittons property, you got a fence at the northern end of their property. Is the gate right at that corner, that northwest corner of the property?
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe, Jerry, right? Yeah. So,
So
right, so the
how
fence
much
is
does
one-
this
one
flared-
line. Right. So
How
the
much
fence goes
does
along
the flared,
and then the fence takes a south, and it's right at right at that corner.
okay. How much of the flare goes onto the Sitton property? Do
Terry?
we know, Mary? Do you have an idea?
Guesstimate 6 foot, 4 to 6 foot.
I'm just trying to look
That
back.
didn't look, the picture didn't make it seem that much.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's that much.
The
That's
picture
not
made it
good.
seem like it's maybe only a foot
No.
over the fence line.
No, it's much more than that. And I can live with the cement. You know, it's the gravel and the retaining wall that holds the gravel up. You know, the cement trucks destroyed that. So that has to be fixed to hold the gravel up because it's washing down the drain.
No problem. I would have done that had you asked me. Thanks for letting me know.
So it sounds to
You
me
told me
like
it was city.
we can leave the cement the way it is. The gravel needs to be restored and put up so that it will not continue to degrade. And that would take care of item number 4 that Attorney Zito mentioned regarding the dirt and the seed, restoring the gravel instead. So then it's just a matter of, can we put that in a special use permit? Probably not, but there needs to be an understanding that that's going to happen.
We can
Well,
really
just
make
go
any
ahead
provision you
and-
want.
Okay, if we can, then that would be great to put it in there.
Yep, that can be a condition of a special use permit.
Then I would ask as part of the special use permit, we add that to it.
Mr. Eubanks, would that be in lieu of an agreement, some type of an agreement between the parties?
Right, I mean, it's understood that both parties would be amenable to that disposition. So if we add that to the special use permit and it's performed, then both property owners should be satisfied.
But in the special use, we can't bind the Sittons to anything. So I think the Sittons and the Ackermans need to come to an agreement between themselves. We can put in the special use that Ackerman has to do something, but the Sittons can still complain about encroachment.
That's exactly where I was going. That's exactly where I was going, Bill. Is that it seems to me that there's going to need to be some type of document that the parties have resolved the issues on encroachment, because that is an issue. And I don't know if it can go into special use, that agreement.
Not the agreement itself, but what would be required of of the Ackermans to be put in there.
Right.
But that doesn't stop the Sittons from still complaining about encroachment. So I'm wondering if the Ackermans and the Sittons can come to an agreement on something and put that in writing and then come back to us. You think that's feasible, Mr. Zito, from what you're hearing?
Yes, it does, and I'll throw this out for rejection. as a means to maybe save a step. Terry, Sarah, it's Aaron again. So are you good with what Mayor Eubanks kind of summarized, that if they put gravel back in front of your gate, and then they do it in such a manner where they fix the retaining wall so that it doesn't continue to deteriorate, and they can keep the concrete there, are you guys good with that? And then that would resolve the issue that they could, you know, I suppose.
I'm good with that, as long as he realizes that's on my land.
Right. So
I just want him to know that.
Yeah, there's no more encroachment. We're not doing no more encroachment, no more trespassing, no more nothing. He needs to leave us alone now.
There would need to be in the agreement then that they have access to that property for that specific purpose.
Mr. Eubanks?
Once they fix it, you don't want driving on you don't want them or their customers, when they're going to the storage facilities, to cut the corner, you know, so to speak, as they're going into the storage facility and cross your property, correct? You don't want that. You don't want that access to be allowed. Is that right,
does
Terry?
not bother me. That does not bother me, no. What I want is what he took out. I can live with the cement. He took out gravel out of the rest of my front of my driveway in front of the gate. He knows that. And he put in dirt. He needs to put back what he took out. And he needs to rebuild the retaining wall that holds it all up.
Right, and I think we have that part resolved. So the question is then, if I rent a storage unit from there and I drive across a corner of your gravel to get into the storage facility, is that okay with you?
Yes, sir, that's fine.
Okay, Sarah, are you okay with that?
Yes, ma'am, or yes, sir, sorry. Yes, absolutely. We just want the rest of the stuff fixed. There should have been a fence up to begin with. I mean, how ridiculous. It doesn't.
And Sarah, we'll get to that point. It's okay, we'll get to that point.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay. So I think we are there agreement. If my folks signed off on the, you know, just as signatory to the condition and the special use permit, would that be satisfactory to everybody?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear what you said, Attorney Zito. Could you repeat that?
If on the special use permit, if there was an additional signatory line, just that we sign off and agree to these above conditions by my clients, the sentence, would that be okay to show their acknowledgement and agreement to these conditions as how they're drafted?
I think
And
there
you can
should
drag
be.
I guess I would want something that they agree to the access that you were saying, you know.
Right. So for example, if the condition said Ackerman shall repair the area with gravel and they'll make sure that the retaining wall is fixed, et cetera, et cetera. Thereafter, the sentence agreed that if a public vehicle were to cross over, that would not be deemed a trespass or an encroachment.
That needs to be
Okay, I know,
covered in a separate agreement.
Okay.
That has to be part of it.
Well, I think we can work with that. We can work on a separate agreement with the Ackerman.
And I would
And
encourage
then that agreement, we can put in the special use that the Ackermans have to do that. Right, Mary?
Understood.
that what action the Ackermans have to perform, yes, that the village would put that in the special use permit. But then as far as what the agreement is between the Sittons and the Ackermans, that's a separate agreement. And that, I believe, also should be recorded so that that's going to run with the land.
Agreed.
Yes, I agree.
And Bill, were you saying that the requirement to enter into the agreement would also be a condition?
Well, that
On the-
again, we can only require what the Ackermans do, so that I don't see that as an issue, that we can put that as per an agreement that's to be entered into with the Sittons. But it's just that we can't put conditions on the Sittons in this
I
special
agree.
use. Okay.
No, I think that's what Bill,
And
you
I
were
just-
saying,
I-
on the Ackerman, that they have to enter into an agreement.
Yeah, Aaron, I was thinking that, and tell me, Mary, if you think this is gonna be a problem, we just delay executing the special use for a month and get the agreement between the Sittons and the Ackermans done so that next time we come in, they have the agreement, then we can make it part of the special use, it's taken care of. And it sounds like the Ackermans and the Sittons should be able to, are going to come to an agreement, and you could draft something pretty quickly. And I would delay the vote on the special use or the zoning change in the special use for 1 month to give them time to get that agreement done. So that's what I was thinking, Aaron. I think that's what you were saying also. Do that first. That's how we enforce it. That's how
Bill, I would agree. I would agree with that approach that we need to wait at least for another meeting to have that written up and provided.
This is Jason. Yeah, I don't see any reason to hurry. But I would want that it say, first of all, who's writing this agreement up? I don't want to hire an attorney. So I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Zito, is it? Are you
Zito.
writing this agreement up? I mean, they brought this. Okay.
I'll be happy to.
And also, what's that?
I'd be happy to draft it for your review.
Yeah.
And you're anticipating drafting something very brief and simple, right, Aaron? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And
Then,
also
Jason,
that
you
it's
go
only.
ahead and look at it and see if you got questions or not. If you don't have any questions, you can do it on your own. It should be simple enough that you feel comfortable.
No, I
The
know.
way
I
I'm
just didn't
envisioning
want.
it.
I just wanted to know who was writing it. And is it a one time? I don't want it to come back that, we fix it to what they want, and then that's it, because they're agreeing that the entrance can be used at that point, correct? Is that what I'm getting out of this?
Yes, and then Mary's saying we would record it, so it's a matter of record that runs with the land, and so it's good for ever, in essence.
Yeah, and I just don't want to be having to, repair it every time there's, something else. So it's a one-time
Okay, Aaron
repair.
can put that as part of the agreement. Fix it
That's
up
what
for
I'm
one
asking.
time, but they don't have to maintain it.
That's right. Not our property.
Sounds reasonable to
That
me.
is- Okay. Thank you.
Do you think that's something you can put together, Aaron?
Yes, sir.
Now, Frank, you said there were 4 things. I know one of this access was one. The fence was another one. That's 2. I don't know what the other 2 were, because
So number one,
signed in late for the public hearing.
right, number one was the fence issue that you mentioned. Number 2 was if the village would require certain hours of operation, or if it would be 24/7. So if there have been any restricted times where people could not enter and utilize the storage facility,
Okay.
because it's in a residential area. And then number 3, I believe, was removal of a cement area. There's an access road between the 2 parcels, and supposedly there was cement that was poured that entered onto the Sittons property. And Mr. Zito, I'm not sure exactly where that occurred.
I think that topic was taken care of as part of number 1.
Okay, so that was that part of it. Okay.
Right. And that was
All right,
just
so-
in this area here.
Yep.
Just like there's a little clip that if you just took where the pin is and you went straight out, there's a little bit of a clip of that cement that looks
So we-
as if
we
it's
just-
on the Sittons property.
Right. So we just addressed numbers 3 and 4 by agreement. So now it's back to, would the village entertain
Height
any
of the
time
fence and the hours
restrictions?
of operation.
And the fence, do we want to modify it from a 6-foot fence to a higher fence?
I need
Those are the
to
two.
interject on that one as
Do we
well.
have any 8-foot fences in the village?
Dick, I don't know if you know if we have any.
Not that I'm aware of.
I know the concern was the wind load
Yes,
and.
there is.
There's 8-foot fence where?
On the east side of
Sarah,
our
did you-
property, it separates an 8-foot fence.
Can you repeat that, Terry?
An 8-foot fence separates us now on our east side of the property. That's an 8-foot fence. I don't understand why they can't do the same thing in the back. We're higher than the lot, so we can look over it.
It's the fence they're talking about.
Oh, it's an 8-foot chain link?
Yes, sir,
No,
with the metal,
yeah.
with the metal slots in it,
yeah, with the slats.
privacy slat.
Oh, okay, I wasn't seeing it. Now I'm seeing what you're talking about. Okay. Jason, would you guys agree to an 8-foot fence?
I would have. I mean, we went through all that, and I thought that wasn't. So I already bought all the material. How do we proceed with that? Because this is going on 2 years trying to get this, and
Okay.
fence was going up this week, so I don't know what we do with that. I have a bunch of 6-foot fence.
Yep.
Yeah,
What-
just
what-
like
what
everything
type
though.
of material did you buy? Is it wood or what?
Yes, correct. Julie's coming here this week by Wednesday, and then we were going to put it up. So I have all the material in my shop right now.
So the concern about what we discussed about having a 6-foot versus an 8-foot fence was with regard to light going on to any neighboring property. And we talked with the Ackermans at length over several meetings about different light fixtures, where the lights would be put on the facility. And I believe we ended up, as you stated at the beginning of the meeting, Bill, that they were to put the light fixtures 1 foot below or lower than the 6-foot fence. So that way light from there and also headlights would not then typically go over the 6-foot fence. It was never discussed that somebody who's 6'5" would be able to look over the fence and see what's going on in the Sitton's yard. I don't think that's the village's concern, is to keep people from looking around in other people's property. But I think the idea is, what is the purpose of the fence? And the fence may be to keep sound out, may
You know,
be to
We're gonna have 80
keep the-
people, 60 to 80 people
Excuse me,
living in our
excuse me.
backyard. You're telling me that
There-
it's not the village? Then whose problem is it?
Mrs.
Sarah?
Sitton,
Sarah, please, you guys cannot interrupt when someone else is talking, okay? You have to
My
wait your turn,
apologies.
okay? My
Okay,
So
problem.
one
my-
thing I forgot, Frank, if I could
Yeah.
insert just one thing. When I first mentioned this, I was talking about the headlights, but I forgot we've got the traffic coming in from Swift Street, so the headlights should never be hitting this fence. The headlights should be coming in parallel to the fence and then going north. That was another thing that we required, Aaron, to stop the headlights from going onto the Sitton property. So
correct.
I agree with what you're saying, Frank. And right now, there's no fence. Somebody could look onto the Sitton property anyway. The Sittons could always put up their own fence if they didn't want people to look onto their property. That's on same way as any other property in the village. You can put up your fence if you want to. I guess that's not, I was just wondering if there was an easy fix, but I guess I'm still comfortable with the 6 foot that we set, so long as all the light fixtures are at least a foot below the fence and the traffic has to go away from the Sittons.
And I suppose my comment to the whole privacy fence issue would be, I think I would take the approach that, sir, if this was another house that was going in a residential area and you were putting up, then I would see it much more as an issue between neighbors there as far as privacy goes. But I think where the consideration or the difference that I see in this situation is the fact that this is actively what's being brought to the village for consideration and approval by the village. So I think the village does have a say in this. And there is the fact that this is a commercial use. that's being put right next to a residence. That the village is gonna say, it's okay to put a commercial use next to a residence and then say, well, the privacy issue, that's not our concern. But the village is the one that says it's okay to put this sort of an intense use right next to a residential home. You know, and this is in a residential neighborhood. So I think there is a little bit of a difference between another home being put in and saying, oh, well, if you want to put a higher fence in so your neighbor can't peer over you, that's one thing. Go ahead and put your own fence up. But I think this is a different situation when you have a commercial use where we don't know who's day in, day out, who's going to those storage units. It could be anybody, you know, and it could be a lot of people there. So I think that does draw a distinction from the 6 foot versus 8 foot, you know, if it's a, you know, another single family home that's going in on that northern lot there.
And I agree with the Aaron, you know, it's different, but it's also just a storage unit. It's not a business where people are going to congregate like an ice cream parlor or something where you would have a bunch of people there. People are going to come in and leave. And I think the village has looked at the sit-ins condition, and by requiring the fence, the village has reasonably addressed some of the privacy concerns by requiring a fence. So I think the village has looked into that myself. I think they've made a reasonable accommodation or a reasonable requirement given the circumstances. It's not any type of business that can be in there. It's only the warehouse where I think people come and go. They don't congregate.
If it's all right, Terry, Sarah, did you guys, now would be the time, Sarah, if you wanted to say something about the fence.
Oh, that's not, you know, coming and going, you know, all hours. When? I mean, seriously, you guys stuck 80 people in my backyard with my grandbabies. I can't even stick them back there.
And now we got the sound bouncing off the building. Did anyone? No one even thought about that.
No.
You know, this is our house here, and now it's like
We live
amplified.
here. And our house, actually, the house itself, like my bedroom window where I sleep, my husband and I sleep, and our master faces the property back there. And so even if you guys put a 6 foot fence up, I have never had to have drapes or curtains or anything. Not really. Now I have to have actual shades. I mean, I didn't ask for this. Terry didn't ask for this. He's been here 30 years, paying taxes. This is where we live. You know, if we would have had a reasonable time in the beginning to ixnay it, we would have tried, because
We wouldn't have let it come in at all.
no,
Because this doesn't belong here.
it doesn't belong
It
here.
does not belong here.
You know?
And just to be clear, just like the notice of this particular hearing was sent to all property owners within 250 feet, that was likewise previously done, and the sit-ins were notified and did not show up. So I just wanted to be clear that it wasn't that they were not notified, albeit we had issues. We understand with the fact that it was trying to put something, we didn't realize that the misinterpretation of the UDO. But this isn't the first time that the concept has come up. So I just want to make that clear, that all the property owners within 250 feet of the subject property were previously notified, and we had no public comment.
Yeah. Until it's built and put right in front of your face, you really don't know what it is, do you?
We went to a board member thinking that we were going to get help with it, and we didn't. We couldn't do nothing about it. So, you know, it was a done deal, but he'd take care of something else for us. So, you know, thanks, guys. I mean, do what you can. I really appreciate it. Again, it's been my husband's home, and it's been my home for, actually, my family's home for 4 generations. So I just don't know what to say. I appreciate your time.
And I think a final comment here is, again, just to look at the practical implications on a resident's life. You know, again, you guys are creating this through a special use permit so that you guys can have the ability to look at storage units in these districts on a case-by-case basis. right? That's the whole purpose of a special use permit, or one of the benefits of a special use permit. It allows on a case-by-case basis for the village to look at a scenario and then impose conditions based on that particular scenario. So in this case, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for an privacy fence in this situation, because of the lay of the land and how things are there. And I think that's the beauty of why you guys use a special use permit. I mean, these folks' lives are going to be impacted by this, and I don't think you hear them saying at this point, no, it should have never go there. You guys are making the wrong decision by even allowing, storage units next to residential homes there. I think they're saying, if you're going to do it, at least try to help me out with some issues like a fence, a privacy fence, 8 feet, etc. To help minimize that impact there. I mean, it's rare, I think, and this is just my own personal opinion, but in my experience as a municipal attorney, I think it's generally rare, not to say that Winnebago can't do it, because every community has to figure out what's right for them, but I think it's rare that you have an intense use like a storage unit facility located immediately next to a residential home, and certainly with a very small buffer. It's not like the Sinton's lot is very large and there's a bigger buffer of yard, or that the storage facility lot is very large and there can be a buffer, from where the actual units are located there. These units are pretty much right there on the property line there, and I think we would just ask for some consideration to be made in light of those facts.
Mr. Zito, and to the board members, we still have item number 2, which is hours of operation. I think that kind of plays into what Mr. Zito is just talking about, is it's in a residential neighborhood bordering also general business district zoning. And that should be something that we should discuss tonight as well, as to, do we want to put in a special use permit specific times of operation, knowing that we do have people living right near that facility. And I would just ask for everyone's thoughts on that one, all the zoning board members, their thoughts on that.
How do you set
Well,
the hours of operation when, unless you're going to padlock the entrance and exits on this property at a certain time?
Who's speaking? Is this Jason?
That was Dennis.
Dennis McDougal.
Oh, Dennis. Well, I guess it's the same way as the leases are going to say that you have to access from Swift and exit on Main. That was going to be part of the leases that the Ackermans have the people sign, and you'd put this as part of the lease agreement, that you can only access it during these times. And my initial explanation, I don't know that it would hurt anybody if we did put some restrictions. How many people are going to use it between, say, midnight and 7 in the morning? Dick, with the other storage units, are they used 24/7, or are they, as a practical matter, used between, say, 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock? Do you know?
Are you talking to me? This is Dick.
Yeah.
As part owner of the one down at the corners, a little bit different situation because we're not in a residential neighborhood, obviously, but we have very little traffic after dark.
Very little when?
After dark. When the sun goes down, we don't have much traffic in and out of there at all. But it is 7 days a week, or it can be.
I understand
This is Jason. One issue I would see is if, the police are being called on our customers after hours. So discuss that, but I would see that be an issue for me.
Okay, and I guess the issue I would see, I could see a reasonable time, because what I'm envisioning now is somebody coming through at 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe with the loud truck like we had up with the Straley property a few years ago, where the people were going to work real early and that was bothering the neighbors. You know, I don't know, for a storage unit like this, it'd be unreasonable to say, hey, wait till 7 o'clock before you access. You know, 7 in the morning till 10 at night, what do people think of that? I don't think that the Ackermans would lose that many customers, because what people, you know, that many people aren't going to be doing it between 10 at night and 7 in the morning.
I think
Aaron,
those
I see you got
hours
your
are,
hand up.
I would agree with those hours or something similar to that. I was thinking 7 or 7:30 a.m. until at least 9 or 9:30 p.m., 10 o'clock. I know Mr. Zito has his hand up. Not everybody can see that, but Mr. Zito, if you would, Chuck, sorry to interrupt, Chuck, but if Mr. Zito wants to.
No, that's right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and Mr. Chairman. So, and this was really a question for the Ackermans there. Just in my experience with some storage units, not all, and I don't know what the Ackermans had intended for theirs. You know, many of the storage units have these mechanized gates. You know, and the tenants are given a key code. You know, you type in a key code, or you have a access key fob pass that when you go in, you punch in the key code, the gate opens, you go in, you do your thing there, and then you drive back out. And there's usually no attendant then on behalf of the storage facility necessary there. I don't know if the Ackermans intended on something like that, but certainly I'm also aware then that those sorts of gates then can have hour restrictions put on it to the point where it won't let you in, you know, outside of the permitted hours there. Certainly, the concept of and that might be one way to help enforcement if they were planning on that sort of a gate there. I don't know if they were there, but as far as the hours that you propose, I personally think that concept might be appropriate there. I would certainly defer to Terry and Sarah to get their input about on a 7:30 to 9:30 or something like that hours there.
Absolutely.
Okay, that was Terry that said absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So, all right.
Terry, are those like, if the proposed hours end up being like 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Monday through Sunday, would that be okay with you and Sarah?
Monday through Sunday?
Yes.
7 days a week?
But that sounds fine hour-wise.
Yeah, hour-wise, that's fine, but why 7 days a week? Can't there be a couple of days during the week when there's no traffic?
I don't think there's going to be that much traffic. It's not like a McDonald's where people are going to be coming and going all day long. And I guess I'd like to see 10 o'clock. I don't know, 9:30, 7 to 10 sounds good to me.
Yeah. No.
And if that's, we can tell it, the Ackermans have to make that part of the lease, and the Ackermans can enforce that against their tenants if they find out the tenants are not abiding by the rules. Same way as they can enforce the direction of travel.
Jason and Teresa, would 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. work within what you're thinking about when your tenants would be there?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. Any
No
board
gate,
members?
though. We're not doing a gate.
Okay. Any board members have any other suggested times or other suggestions regarding the operation restrictions?
This is Mike Booker. I think those hours are reasonable, but without a gate, how do we enforce it?
The Ackermans enforce it if there's complaints of tenants in there. If it's reported to Ackermans, the Ackermans can enforce it by terminating the lease.
Mr. Zito has his hand up.
Bill, I guess my question to that is, so let's say the sit-ins say, hey, we contact whoever, we contact the Ackermans directly, or we contact through the village. Let's say we make a report that there have been multiple nights that people have been there at 11:30 at night, or at 5:30 in the morning, whatever it is. At that point, we make that complaint, but it ends up still being then a private issue. It's up to the Ackermans then to actually take enforcement action there. Would this be a condition of the special use permit that if they don't follow through on the enforcement action, that's a violation of their special use permit then?
Well, it would be a violation because it's only be open for business. I would anticipate calling the police. They can call the Ackermans, or they can call the police saying people are there and they aren't supposed to be that time of day. That'd actually be trespassing, I guess. If they're there at 2 o'clock in the morning, nobody's supposed to be there other than the Ackermans.
Right, but it would typically be the Ackermans who would be registering the complaint that someone's trespassing on their property, not a third party.
True. But the citizens could file a complaint with the police unless the village doesn't want them to go that route.
This would be similar to the
people congregating in a place they're not supposed to be.
This would be similar to the Straley property, wouldn't it? In terms of things occurring outside of certain time frames, with the village being involved.
But I guess from just a police preservation of time point of view, I would like to at least see that if there is a problem, that the citizens would contact the Ackermans in registering their complaint. And then if for whatever reason, I don't have any reason to believe this would be the case, but if they call and they're just ignored by the Ackermans, then I could see contacting the village. But I certainly don't think that it's fair for the police. The police department have other things to do than to worry about if somebody's on the property. Again, not doing anything wrong, but just physically on the property outside of hours. Are we going to start doing that for every business?
And I think that
you have a good point, Mary.
That I don't know if this is necessarily a where we would look for necessarily the police department would be the enforcement mechanism. But that's why I was still looking for a hammer in the event that the Ackermans don't take enforcement actions, lease termination or this or that. That if we get to that point, could it be a condition? Because I just worry about the fact that it's a private agreement, right, between two private entities, the tenant and the landlord. Where do I come in as somebody? How do I get privity on that action, right? Or as a neighboring property owner. But if it's a condition in the special use permit, ultimately, if it gets to the level of they're ignoring the complaints, that the village can at least step in and say, you know what, I have the right to pull a special use permit or suspend the special use permit. That gives you as a village have direct privity against the permit holder to take some sort of an action. And it doesn't tie up the police department either.
That's what I anticipate, Aaron. It's going to be part of the special use. The Ackermans could have their special use pulled if they ignored it. There'd have to be a hearing on it to find out, are they allowing people to operate willfully, allowing people to operate outside the hours and repeatedly allowing them to operate outside the hours. They could lose their special use.
Bill, if that's the case, then I want to be able to put cameras up. I'm not having a third party say somebody was there without being able to see it myself. So now you got to talk about cameras.
I think you have the ability to put cameras on your property. And I think that would be a good suggestion, so you would know who is going in and what unit they're going to and at what time. Perfect. I think that's actually the best way to document it, rather than having the police called or the village called, because we don't typically have anybody available between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. unless it's a police officer.
Perfect.
But I would anticipate enforcement only in egregious circumstances. Here and there, somebody violating it, you deal with it in your lease to them. But if it's over and over and over again, repeated and willful, to me, it's got to be repeated and willful before your permit would be pulled. You have to just be thumbing your nose at it. So there'd be an ongoing complaint time and time again that maybe you put up the cameras later, find out if you get complaints first. Put the cameras if you want to, but why not wait to see if there's problems? I don't see pulling your permit because it happens once or twice.
Well, you didn't say that at the first time. I'm good with that.
Okay, that's fair. That's how I'm looking at the village enforcing it. What do you think, Frank and Mary?
Well, I think Attorney Zito had a good point in terms of what, that the village could pull the special use permit if we require that as part of the special use. I think it definitely needs to be in there. That allows the village to have some teeth in, in this and have the ability to do something. I also feel, Bill, by you talking about it, you bring up the point of, and Jason brought up the point about cameras. I think that that's very important that if they do have the cameras, it would definitely help identifying if anyone is going after hours. We don't have any question if the sit-ins call. We can have the Ackermans, they can take a look at the cameras, see who it was, and they can address it with the tenant. And as you stated, Bill, if they do not address it with the tenant, at some point the village then can come in. So I think that would lay everyone's concerns. The sit-ins would be satisfied that no one should be there between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Ackermans can be satisfied that they now have the ability to see who's going in and out after hours, if anyone is. And then the village has the ability, if the Ackermans don't take necessary action, to ultimately pull the special use permit. So I think that all of this together should satisfy everybody that's involved.
Frank, I would like to address one thing. I don't see why it has to be part of the special use permit to have a clause that you can revoke it. I think it's inherent that you can revoke it.
I agree.
Because if you put in that you can revoke it, you've got to put that in every special use. Otherwise, the implication is you can't. I think it's inherent that you can.
Right. No, I agree. I don't think we put that in there. I think the only thing we put in there are hours of operation. But then spanning from that, if there are people that are violating the hours of operation, that is something the village then may consider. But yes, I don't believe we would put that in the special use permit itself.
Okay, I agree. And then I guess on the Ackerman's point of it, to me, it has to be egregious. It happened over and over, and it has to be your tenants. If I go drive, if I'm not your tenant and I decide to drive through there at 2 o'clock in the morning and you don't want me there, I would expect you to call the police and say I'm trespassing. You can't control other than your own tenants there in case people decide to joyride through there. I can't see the Ackermans being held responsible for that so long as they are reasonably trying to live within the guidelines. I just don't want unrealistic expectations on the sit-ins part.
Right, and that is another good point, Bill, that if there is a trespasser, someone who's not a tenant, just driving through there, whether it's someone that looking to vandalize or steal, or just taking a joyride through there, it's not then going to be a negative impact on the Ackermans. But with the cameras that they're proposing, it would allow them to see if they have people that are going there for that purpose.
Especially since there are no gates.
Correct.
Right. And I don't see the need for gates myself.
No, I don't either.
Terry and Sarah, this is Aaron. You guys have thoughts? Do you think this is a reasonable compromise?
Did you hear that, Terry and Sarah?
Yes, we're here.
Okay, just making sure.
Not sure the compromise we're talking though.
So no, we understand that there's no gate, hours of operation, we've got settled.
And we're not allowed to call anybody. There's no one we can call at 3 in the morning if there's someone in there waking us up.
We call the police. Can't really do that though. I just want the fence up. and then to leave us alone, you guys.
So what was the opinion on the hours of operation at the moment?
I would be fine with 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. as suggested by Mr. Emmer.
I would second that. Do we have a vote on that part, Mary?
If you like, sure.
Any further discussion on that? If not, have a vote.
Okay, so there says, am I going to consider it that it's a motion by Mr. Emmert? Is that where it's coming from?
I think
It's actually from me.
From
Mary.
Frank?
Yeah, no, it's
From Frank? Okay. So Frank Eubank,
I second.
seconded by Bill Emmert.
right.
Correct.
Okay, to have hours, operations, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Okay,
Monday through Sunday.
Monday to Sunday. Okay. That's the motion. The second, so the roll call, Mr. Van Sickle,
Yes.
Mr. Emmert,
Yes.
Mr. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Koning,
Yep.
Mr. McDougal,
Yes.
and Mr. Maderis.
No.
And okay, and Mr. Booker.
Yes.
Maderis, okay. That passes.
Now, does this cover all the points that we had?
I believe those are all the points that we have. I know we're putting over to next meeting items 3 and 4 for the parties to discuss and come up with an agreement on their own and then present it to the village. Mr. Booker has his hand up.
3 and 4 is the encroachment, right? For lack of a better word.
Actually, 4 was the, but we've covered that, at least according to my notes. 4 was the retaining wall in front of the culvert on the property, on their property that was damaged in the construction process.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I would like Aaron to try to see if they can get an agreement between the parties on that before we grant the special use. Guess the only other thing is the fence, and myself, I'm okay with the restrictions we have. You know, I guess we got to find out if any board member wants to change that provision that we have right now in the proposed restrictions.
I'm fine with the restrictions that are stated in Exhibit A 1 through 9, which includes a fence of a 6-foot high fence.
I have a question on number 9. Can the special use permit allow the property to be rezoned back to 2-family residential?
just hold on, I'm writing.
That's what Mary said before.
Yes. Okay, I was
Right.
just writing, I'm sorry. Yes, you can then revert it back to whatever you want, and I believe that the typical language we say is that it would go back to what it was or other appropriate zoning as the village would see fit. Now, presumably at that time for that reversion, depending on how much passage of time, we would have a hearing on that change in the zoning. I would see that, because what if the whole complexion of the neighborhood is changed by that time? You might not want to move it back, and you would want to hear public comment as to what would be most appropriate.
I have a question on item number 8. This is Mike Booker. We're talking about the property owner must place appropriate signage and pavement markings. Can somebody expand a little bit on pavement markings for me?
I thought we were talking about arrows on the ground, just for the direction of traffic.
Right, because we wanted to make sure that the traffic exited to the north. And if there were the pavement arrows, that was my understanding of the conversation. And if there's pavement arrows on the ground, they would understand which way they're supposed to be going.
Okay, is that Jason's understanding as well?
Well, the only
Jason, that's
pavement is
a-
the only pavement is the entrance and exit, correct? Yeah, we'll put an
The-
arrow
the
on
approach-
each one.
The approaches are the only pavement. The rest is going to be rotomill, correct?
That is correct. So we'll put arrows on the entrance and exit concrete.
And just so you know,
really want
Is the rotomill loose stick, or I thought it was compacted?
It is
It,
compact.
it compacts, but if you put arrows on there, it's going to look not good.
It'll be
Okay.
gone in a year if you paint arrows on that rotomill. I guarantee you that. One winter.
Okay. I'm fine with the access and egress. That tells people what they're supposed to be doing. The whole intent is just to get the flow so the headlights don't go towards the sitting property.
That was my concern, was that we were talking about something other than pavement. And this does very specifically mention pavement.
Okay.
The other thing is, and
So
I
would
don't,
you like
this
to
is,
change that to at the exit and entrance as opposed to pavement, Mike? So it's more clear?
That would do it for me, Bill.
I would
I have
agree
no
with that
problem
too.
with that.
okay, I got that.
So at this time, should we then entertain a motion to have items 1 through 9 then part of the special use permit? Or are we going to wait till the next meeting to do all of those along with the, putting back the gravel?
I would
I
recommend that
would
we wait till we
wait
get the
till next
agreement.
meeting to make sure we have
Let's wait
an agreement for the encroachment.
Put in the additional items that we agreed to.
That sounds fine to me.
The other thing, and I don't know if it would be of interest to any of the zoning board members, and in particular to Mr. Booker, because I know that he hasn't been on the whole time. But during the course of this, I had Kelly get to me copies of all the minutes that address this whole issue starting in February of 2020. So if that's something that anybody wants shared with them, I can get those to you. Just kind of,
I'd like to see them.
just remind, so that I can just get them out. If you want to read them, fine. It just kind of helps reemphasize or whatever, refresh memories as to what we discussed and why.
That would be very helpful to me, Mary.
Okay, I will get that out then to all of you.
Thank you, Mary.
Jason, while we're on the subject of the markings and so forth, this site plan that you have in front of you that was part of the ordinance that was already drawn up, we want to keep it as an attachment to the new ordinance. But could you get your engineer to bring this thing up to date? For example, the arrows as are shown, the way the drawing is made, you cannot read any of the dimensions at all. It's all blurred. Can you get him to make this so that we attach it to the ordinance? Someone could read it 20 years from now?
Don't you have it in paper, or what are you looking at?
Only thing I've ever had is something on the internet.
Oh,
I'm
there's
looking at
the village
exactly
has the whole packet. Village has the whole packet.
And we would have
Dick?
those, Mr. Ackerman, the village would have those in the larger size form, correct? Based on the
That's right.
requirements of the UDO?
That's right. I think I gave
Jason,
2 copies to you guys.
Yeah, it
Dick,
should have
did
been,
you get
a
one?
minimum of 4, should have been a minimum of 4 copies.
Well,
One went to
actually,
Oh,
me,
yeah, whatever it was supposed to be.
one went to me, one went to the fire department, one went to Chad, and one stayed at the village office.
well, because actually
right.
under the UDO, there's supposed to be 14 copies that are given. So that there's one for each of the zoning board members, me as the village attorney, and then the other people that were mentioned.
And the 14 copies are supposed to be given to the zoning board first. But what can I do to get something that can be attached to the ordinance that can be read? That's all I'm asking. If it's in a larger form, get your engineer to reduce it for us. But this is not
Chuck,
like.
I've got a question about the plat, this diagram that you're talking about. I
Yeah.
didn't notice it before, but it shows that egress onto Swift by those arrows. I thought all egress was supposed to be onto Main.
That's what I said. I'd like to have it updated.
Right.
Oh, okay, so the arrows would just be in and out. In on Swift and out on Main. Okay.
It shows arrows coming in from the east, which is not going to happen.
Right. Okay, I know what you're talking about now. Thank you.
And I can't read any of the placement of the buildings on the property. I just think it should be legible for them to be using it.
Yeah, I can get you some. I'm not understanding. So the copies that are at the village won't work, is what you're saying. You want, what, 8 by 11 size, or what are you talking about?
Well, what you got in your hand, 8.5 by 11.
So 8.5
I don't
by
have
11,
anything in my
Jason. But also what we need is the current one that we have shows traffic going both directions. And in reality, we've since discussed that it would only go one way. So we would need that portion updated to show the arrows with the traffic flow change to what we've agreed to. So
Well, what about being able to use that driveway for my other business? My property.
What you do with your property, you can do it, but.
Oh, okay. You just need that for the.
We don't need arrows on it.
Oh, okay.
Well, wait a second.
Yeah, I can get that.
You can
changed.
egress. Can he exit his property to the east? By going west? That would be contrary to
Yeah,
this.
I can't always do that. I have big equipment.
But I don't think the intent was for you to be able to take vehicles from the property to the east, run it across this storage unit property and exit onto Swift Street. I don't think
That's
we're
why it was
supposed to
drawn
have
like that.
any vehicles exit on Swift. You can access your property by going across this, going east. If you're intending to exit from your other properties onto Swift Street, we got to talk about that, because that's not what I understood the agreement to be.
That's why it's drawn like that, I guess. It's because what I originally discussed with my engineer. But so now it's being brought up. That's all I know.
Yeah, the special use, the way we have it written, you would not be able to exit onto Swift Street no matter which property you're leaving from.
How can we remedy that?
We would want to maintain the village's condition that traffic flow have to be one way. So all exits would have to be out on the main street.
And I take it that there's another way for Mr. Ackerman to get egress from his own other property other than having to go to Swift Street. Because isn't there one on the other side?
But I can't
Right.
always use that
Why is that?
because it's a horseshoe that's small into the alley for my long truck and trailer. I mean, that was drawn that way and you guys approved it. What are you saying now? I mean,
Nobody
When did we
knew
approve
that
this?
that's what those arrows were.
what's that?
Nobody knew that that's what those arrows meant.
When the drawing was provided
asked.
to us, the drawing was provided to us, initially you were gonna have traffic going both ways into and out of by the
No, it
tenants.
doesn't. No, it does not show that on the two other driveways, does it? I don't believe so.
Yes, it does.
It shows arrows going both ways on the other one.
Shows them going south on the outside one and then north on the center.
South on the outside one.
I think the issue is that we don't want any traffic going south. If Jason is using the ingress and egress as a going east or west, there's not going to be any light shining into the Sittons
Thanks, Dan.
property.
Right.
If everything is marked on Jason's property, that once you enter, you can, it's one way north, that shouldn't be an issue.
Right, and I agree, Dennis, that the whole idea is to have the traffic flow from south to north. The east-west is not going to be an issue. So whether traffic comes in from the east to the west or west to the east, as long as they pick a corridor going north, then they travel north on that corridor and then they exit onto Main Street.
I
You're gonna
don't
to
have a
reword
problem.
Number 8. To specifically allow traffic to go east and west from the adjoining property. I read 8 as prohibiting that, the way it's written right now.
I agree with Bill because it doesn't limit it to say customers or tenants. It's just any traffic.
But it could be modified to say customers or tenants. And then that way the owner would have the ability to go either direction.
Yes, it could if that's.
I would not feel comfortable restricting the owner from being able to take a vehicle and going either direction on his or her own property. Especially if it's not going to cause a problem going east or west to any.
How would I, oh, I'm sorry, Frank. I didn't know you were done.
Those such as plowing or taking any vehicles across there, I wouldn't see an issue.
Yeah, snow plowing alone, you're going to want to go both ways.
Right. So I don't think it should restrict the current property owner. And I think we could maybe specifically put that in there, that only the current property owner may, or that I don't know how you want to put the language, but that all customers or invitees, or however you want to put it, to the property shall be limited to the one way. But I don't want it to apply to the property owner.
And I think we would just say property owner, not current property owner, because obviously they could sell this property.
Correct.
Then you have to identify the property that you're talking about, the property to the east.
which is Jason's property.
Right, but if you have to make that part of this special use so that if we go to enforce it, it's clear, it's not vague.
Right.
Well, what I'm saying is the owner of the property that owns the storage units could go either way. I'm not talking about anybody else, a next door property owner or anything like that. I'm talking about only the property owner for the storage units would be allowed to have his or her own vehicles travel either direction, east or west.
But I thought
So-
that's what Jason was talking about. He needed to be able to exit his property to the east by going west. So if he was to
does.
sell that property, they'd have the same issue Jason has.
Right, and that's why we're saying it just would be that this in effect doesn't apply to the property owner, that restriction.
But
Whoever
the property owner of
may
the
be.
property to the east, not the property owner of the storage units.
And
This
I
is the
guess I
property
would
to the
agree
east which is
with Mayor.
causing the problem.
Well, I guess my point would be that's the using the term property owner works as long as both properties are owned by the same person. If Jason sells off the parcel to the east to someone else but holds the storage unit parcels, I would say that I would not want that parcel to the east with that new owner being allowed to travel across Jason's property then, because that's just added
Right,
traffic.
And that's my
Now
point
it's
too.
a throughway.
Right,
And,
Aaron, I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's my point. I believe it should just be the property owner where this storage facility is, should be able to go either direction. If the Ackermans,
That should work real well.
yeah, if the Ackermans sell the other property and keep the property with the storage units, they can still go either way. If the Ackermans sell the storage units and keep the property that's to the east, then they're gonna have to find a different way to get their vehicles in and out.
and
But as long as they own both properties, they're fine taking their vehicles either way, east or west.
But why limit a future owner? If the reason for doing this is because the Ackermans need to exit the property from the east, anybody who buys that's gonna have the exact same problem.
I didn't hear that necessarily, Bill, with all due respect. And Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, the parcel to the east has 3 entrances? 3 means of ingress, egress, Sarah?
Property from the east has a right-of-way right on the east edge of their property. Goes north
There's
and
an
south.
alley. There's a public alley, and they own the property in front. They go through the back, and then there's the other entrance that way, to the north of us.
Frank, I guess another way of looking at it is if a new owner, the Ackermans sell the property to the east. So that new owner, if he can exit that property by going east or north or south, why can't the Ackermans right now exit that easterly property the same way?
Because I have
I
a
don't
truck
think-
and trailer that's really long and it pinches there at times. I can't get parked by coming in from that way around.
But any new owner might have the same issue. The zoning should just be a general principle. It shouldn't be zoning for a particular individual's needs.
But I don't think you
It should be
are.
the need of that
I think what Frank's talking about is how much restriction are we going to put on someone's ability to use their own property? We're doing what we need to, of course, with the special use permit, but beyond that, allowing them to go around their own property, but it's this property owner.
Bill, how do
perfect-
you snow plow it one way? You can't do that.
To be perfectly blunt, my position is I don't care who the property owner is to the east. I really don't care. All I care about is the owner that owns the units has the ability to drive any way that owner wants to drive on the property, east or west. And if the current owner of the storage units does not own the property to the east, then that owner of the property really isn't going to want to go out to the east. But that person should be able to go east or west on his or her own property. So I don't see it as an issue. I really feel that the owner of that storage unit property should not be restricted in any way going east or west. And I don't care who owns the property to the east. It doesn't matter in my world. We don't address that because it doesn't matter. All that matters is the current owner of the facility. That's all I wanted. That's how I want it to read. So if I were to make a motion, it would be that all tenants and of the property would obey the one way coming in from Swift Street and the one way to the north, but the property owner is not restricted going east or west on it on that particular parcel.
Well, and the point that Jason just brought up is moving snow. If you look at the property down there, you're limited as it is. And by having a fence on the south edge, that limits it even more. So you've got to have somewhere to take that snow. And if you have a winter like we had this past year, there's no place to put it. Correct, Jason?
Yeah, I'm gonna push it down onto my onto the corner there. There's one spot to put it there by G&G's building, but I have to be able to push to the south, which I should be able to do. It's my property.
Correct.
The arrow should only determine traffic flow for their customers.
Agreed.
So what does that leave the scenario then? Jason owns the storage unit lots, but he sells the property to the east to somebody else. Does that property owner to the east now get to use that east-west drive on the storage unit lot?
That would not be what I would allow. I would not want that new owner to the east to be able to use that property where the storage units are.
Right, they get to Swift Street, and I would agree with you, Mayor. Again, it makes sense while Jason is the owner of both parcels, but if he sells the other one, or he sells, again, the mayor's position of whoever owns the storage facility unit gets to use the east-west access, but no one else.
Right.
There.
Yeah.
Well, you close that driveway with another fence between the storage property and the east property that you're referring to.
Ultimately, if it's sold, yeah, the property owner may want to do that. Either property owner may do that. If the east parcel was sold or something, yeah.
And since we're talking about not restricting the owner of the property in that way, what about the hours of operation? We've talked about snow plowing. Jason probably is going to want to plow that early in the morning before 7 or 7:30. He may be over there late emptying out a unit that someone's defaulted on the lease. Are we restricting his ability to conduct business only during those hours as well?
I don't think so. To me, that's not operation of the storage unit. It's his own maintenance.
Thank you.
That'd be my interpretation anyway, Mike.
I would agree with the way you're saying it, Bill. You know, we have people that get up at 4 a.m. to snowplow driveways because they've got to be leaving and go to work at 5 a.m. And yeah, it wakes me up in the morning, but that's what you do when there's a snowstorm. So, so I agree, Bill, with your thoughts.
I wish they'd plow mine at 5 a.m.
I hear you.
Hire me, Chuck.
So assuming that, and I don't know if someone's going to do it as a motion, but assuming that that's the case, we still, back to Mr. Van Sickle's point, we still need this map corrected, updated, whatever you want to call it, because right now it shows traffic in both directions in certain places. And
Yeah, no problem.
and we would, and if you could, Jason, I know that Mr. Van Sickle had indicated, you know, an 8.5 by 11 to be able to attach to an ordinance, and that's great. But if you could also have your engineer do a couple of the larger size ones so that we have those at the village. I know I like to keep one that's larger, just in case there's ever an interpretation issue. They're just, of course, much easier to read.
Did you hear, Mary, that there's 4 down there, 4 out already?
There are 4 down there, Jason, but as I'm understanding it, they do not reflect what is now the direction that the travel.
Oh, I see. I wasn't getting what you were saying. I got you.
That's what I'm saying, that, you know, to update it to show what the direction of travel is to be. But then, yes, if you could get 4 of those to the village,
No
so I
problem.
think at this point we don't need the 14, but 4 to the village office, and then that way I'll grab a set, and then they can keep them as we need.
And Jason, as also was requested, if you could not only do the 4 larger ones, but have at least one that can be attached as a PDF that's 8.5 by 11, then we all could receive that one, just so we can all take a look at it.
So multiple copies of the small one?
We really just only need it electronically, so the small one could just be sent.
I think that's
email.
what. I think that's what Chuck is looking at, and he can't read it. So, but I can try again.
Well, he's got all this pretty pavement all over everything, but it obscures all the dimensions.
Well, the other thing too is that if we record anything, there's nothing that prevents us from having a bigger size copy attached. I'm not talking, 2 feet by 3 feet, but certainly the 11 by 17 or some larger size, we can always fold in half and attach.
Yeah, I'll talk to him and see what we can come up with.
Okay, thank you.
I just like to keep it on the agenda. I don't think we should do it almost immediately. We got still variances to talk about. And there's up in the corner, there's a site that shows parking in a certain area. And we still have to talk about variances for parking and for the pavement. But before it's over, I'd like to have it so that we can read it when we're finished.
Yes, I'll talk to him.
Okay, so now the thought is that we'll delay any action tonight and delay it for 1 month.
I'd make a motion to lay it
So
over
Frank,
to
do
next.
you want to make a motion to modify number 8?
Yes.
I think it was number 8.
Yeah.
We can
So
get rid of that
that-
business tonight.
Okay, Mike, you want to make your motion?
Right. That in lieu of similar signage and pavement, it would be arrows marked at the point of ingress and egress. Pavement markings at the point of ingress and egress.
And you said, Mr. Booker, in lieu of what?
Striking pavement markings on the property. the fourth sentence down. So
What
it would
number?
be number 8. Yeah. So on the fourth line, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, fourth line down to number 8. Property owner must place appropriate signage and markings, traffic markings at the point of ingress and egress.
Okay,
So that it would be reflected on the aprons then, rather than throughout the property.
But I don't think we would want that arrow going west on the marked on the apron. I don't know why that arrow going from east to west should even be on there.
No, I'll have him change that, Chuck. Now that it's said that the property owner can go both ways.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Are you going to put that in the
Booker,
restrictions, Frank?
I'm sorry, Mr. Emmer, didn't hear you.
Are you going to put the property owner exception in writing on the restrictions?
Yes, that's what I thought the direction was.
And so I guess I'd like to vote on them individually. I agree with Mike's. I want to vote no for the other. So how do we do this? Do we have two different motions or just one motion to amend 8?
I will second Mr. Booker's motion, so that way we have just his motion that's pending, and it only addresses modifying number 8 to what he's asking it to be modified to.
Okay, that makes sense.
So we
now
have
Mike, Seth, Mary.
Vote on this?
Are you ready to vote on it? Okay,
Do you
then.
have it written down, Mary?
I do. That Mr. Booker's motion is to amend the signage and traffic markings such that they're at the point of ingress and egress, so it'd be reflective on the aprons rather than throughout the property.
Okay.
Roll call.
Okay, then I would have, hold on, Mr. Van Sickle.
Yeah.
Mr. Emmert,
Yes.
Mr. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Koenig, Mr. Koenig?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear you. Mr. McDougall,
Yes.
Mr. Maderas,
Yes.
Mr. Booker.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Then I had, this was Frank's, he said, if I made a motion. So I'll read this and then Mr. Eubank, if it's wrong, tell me. But you said if I made a motion, it would be that all tenants of the property would have to obey the one-way coming in from Swift Street and the one-way to the north, but the property owner wouldn't be restricted to that one direction of travel, so that the arrows are only there to determine the traffic flow for those customers.
That's correct, and I would make that motion.
Is that going to be the exact wording of the restriction, or are you going to draft it to conform with that statement?
I'm going to draft it to conform with that because, I don't want to be stuck to those exact words. I'm going to be amending what's in there, but to me, the purpose of this is to get the gist of what's here in those restrictions.
Okay.
For a second?
I'll second.
That was
Mr.
Mr. McDougall,
McDougall.
seconded?
Yes.
Okay.
Roll call.
Okay, Mr. Van Sickle,
Yes.
Mr. Emmert,
No.
Mr. Eubanks,
Yes.
Mr. Koenig,
Yes.
Mr. McDougall,
Yes.
Mr. Maderas,
Yes.
and Mr. Booker.
Yes.
Okay.
So we are then to continue in another month. Is that correct?
Right, so I would make a motion that we lay over to the next meeting, the current zoning change.
And that would be
Second that.
the current zoning change recommendation, correct? It's,
Correct, yes,
because it
thank
will
you,
be
Mary.
the village board that would actually make that zoning change.
Correct.
Okay. Somebody get a second?
I second it.
Okay, that was Mr. Emmert.
Correct.
Ready for a roll call, Mr. Van Sickle?
Ready?
Okay, Mr. Van Sickle,
Yes.
Mr. Emmert,
Yes.
Mr. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Koenig,
Yes.
Mr. McDougall,
Yes.
Mr. Maderis,
Yes.
and Mr. Booker.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, I have a question
Ready?
for Aaron. Aaron, do you have contact information for the Ackermans so you can get in touch with them once you draft the agreement?
I do not.
Jason, can you give him a phone number or an email or something so he can send you what he comes up with for the agreement to address the access on the Swift Street, that issue?
Yes. You ready?
Yep.
815-222-7801.
815-222-7801.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Mary?
do you need
when's
an
that
email?
next zoning meeting?
I'm sorry?
When's the next zoning meeting then going to be, since we laid it over?
Typically the fourth Monday
Yeah,
of the
fourth
month.
Monday of the month. While I'm confirming that date, did you want an email address for Mr. and Mrs. Ackerman as well?
I'll take one, Jason, if you can give it to me.
It would be,
I'm sorry, I didn't. Do you wanted an email?
Yes, Jason.
Yes, if I can have.
Ready?
Yep.
ACK 7173 at M as in Mary, S as in Sam, N as in Nancy .com. My email's been saying that it's full. It's not. I'll get your email. I'm not sure what's going on there.
All right, Jason, I didn't catch the first letters. I caught 7173 at msn.com. What was the part before 7173?
ACK,
A is an
part of our
apple.
name. A is in apple, C is in cat, K is in Karen.
Sure. Okay, ACK 7173 at msn.com.
Yes.
Got it.
And Attorney Zito, the next zoning board meeting, the fourth Monday in June is June 28th, and that would be at 7 PM.
Got it.
I'm sorry, I have to ask, where are we on the fence? Because I have the material, Julie's coming, and we're building.
I think we made it, we didn't make any changes, did we?
Nope.
Okay, I just didn't catch that.
Yeah, according to the notes I have, there was discussion, and my understanding that was just staying the way that it was.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I would make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Eubank makes the motion to adjourn.
Motion second?
Chuck Van
Second.
Sickle. Okay, I have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Eubank. I heard the second by Mr. Van Sickle. Okay, for the roll call, Mr. Van Sickle?
Yeah.
Mr. Emmert?
Yes.
Mr. Eubank?
Yes.
Mr. Koenig?
yes.
Mr. McDougall?
Yes.
Mr. Maderis?
Yes.
And Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Okay. And so I show it is adjourned at 9:13 PM.
Correct.
Rick,
Okay, I will work on, I'll get you those copies of the, as I mentioned, of the prior minutes that are in a packet. We'll work on the revisions that we have so far for the special use permit. I'll get it out to you so you can at least look at it, understanding that this is tabled right now, but so you can at least see the wording as well as the minutes.
sounds good.
Right. Thank you,
Okay,
Mary.
Anything else?
thank you. Mhm.
Thank you, Mary.
Good night.
Yep.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.